Where's my thing? Hello, and welcome to Cut and Uncut with Daphne and Bonnie Violet. My name is Daphne, and I am Miss Cut.
And I'm Bonnie Violet, and I'm Uncut. Here we talk about all things trans.
And then some.
In this episode, we'll be reacting to REN Chapter 6, Chinchilla's Bounce Back, Z Machine Habit, and Falling in Reverse, Watching the World Burn.
I know, right, Bonnie? And a big shout out and a huge thank you to our Patreon members, Skylar Bean and our trade tier. And our free members are Jacob Blankenship, Elizabeth, Danielle Loyal, Bertha D, Carrie Beardsley, and Eclectic Fandom. Hugs and kisses.
Be sure to watch us on YouTube, join us on Patreon, follow us on the TikTok, and get the merch.
I got mine. So, Bonnie, what are you drinking?
I actually I've been making sun tea because it's hotter than fuck. Speak of heat, right? I've been making like sun tea. So this is a mandarin ginger tea, sun tea. And then I made lemonade ice cubes and put in it. So
nice.
How about you?
Well, I have some Black Girl Magic in my cup. Yes. I can't really take the credit. I'm lying.
They're putting that in the cup now.
From what I hear, it was actually Spanish Girl Magic, Mexican Girl Magic. It is called Watermelon Water Fresca. I think I said that right. And what it is a watermelon that I de-rimed and I juiced it. I added a pinch of lemon juice and a cup of sugar, and it is like...
You made it yourself?
I made it myself.
You'll have to send me that recipe. I ate lots of water.
So good. I definitely will. If anybody else is interested in the recipe, let me know. Get in these comments and tell me.
Maybe we can share it. We'll share it in the community if you share it with me.
Sure.
Post it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we skipped a week last week because, Daphne.
Lies. That's Bonnie's. Bonnie is too popular. She's the girl. She's got this going on, that going on. So it was not me. I was all make-upped and ready.
Yes, I was still in a car driving back from San Diego, or San Francisco, the other San. But yes, I'm sorry about last week. Now we're back to this week. In our last one, we talked about potentially doing 4 this week. And so I think that's what we're going to go ahead and do, especially to make up for last week.
Yeah. And for those of you that we didn't get to, we want to wish you a happy 4th of July. Those of you that celebrate it. And for me, I had a wonderful celebration. My puppy was not afraid of the fireworks, which I was so excited to find out.
Was this your first 4th of July with them?
Yes. Well, he was a baby before. So, yeah, this is I think this is his second. But I actually also did something else very fun, Bonnie.
Oh, what's that?
I played pickleball.
What do I know what that is?
I don't know if you know what it is. It's kind of like ping pong, tennis / exhaustion, but it was so much fun. We had so much fun, and I only got to play for 30 minutes because I started to black out. I started to get the lights started closing in on me. My heart was going 1,000 miles per hour, so I had to step out. But it was so much fun. I highly recommend everybody try pickleball.
I'll have to check it out sometime.
Yeah.
All right, so should we get going?
Let's get going, Bonnie. I'm done with the pleasantries.
Done being pleasant. All right, so we're going to start with chapter 6 of REN tonight. And we'll just go ahead and get the ball rolling.
Roll that footage.
I'm going to try and hold it together throughout this one.
I was like, I thought we were done with all the rough ones. He's already crying.
Right. I hope y'all got your seatbelts on because we getting in your tissue, Tito's.
All right. In all seriousness, here we go.
2015 was the worst year of my life. At the end of 2014, I attended a private UK-based ME specialist clinic called Breakspear. For some reason, the treatments had sent my health nosediving, and I became more sick than I'd ever been. I became so weak that I couldn't walk to the bathroom without needing to lie on the floor to recover. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV. All I could do there was lie there in pain. It was obvious during this time that I needed to move back home with my mum again. She moved to Cardiff with a new husband, and they had a spare room, which became my tomb for the next 8 months. At this point, I was so weak that the most that I could manage to do a day was to take a shower. The rest of the time I was confined to my bed. I started reacting even more severely to foods, so every single meal had to be blended into soups or broths to avoid negative reactions. Pain constantly shot through my shin bones and through my feet, like splinters. My stomach would gurgle, and the muscles in my body would constantly twitch, spasm, and ache. My body felt drained of every single ounce of life, and I was so tired, but I was too wired to sleep. I was so full of mental fog that reading a single page on a book seemed impossible. The daylight coming in from behind the curtain hurt my eyes. Loud sounds felt overwhelming. All I could do was wait and pray for sleep, knowing that when I woke from it, nothing would change. I wouldn't feel in any way rested, and all the symptoms would persist. This went on and on and on. It was day after day of physical and mental torture. I thought of concentration camps, of prisoners of war being tortured. At least the escape of death seemed likely. During that time I never got breaks. My whole body burned. My brain was on fire, and I had nowhere to hide. In the merciful moments where I could concentrate, I tenaciously trawled the internet, looking for ways out. My research drew me to a procedure called a fecal transplant that was having success managing things like Crohn's disease or colitis. It had also gained success in some select cases of autoimmune conditions like MS too. At the time, I felt like much of my issues were caused by dysbiosis, which means an imbalance in your gut flora. I noticed that all the food intolerances started after a large course of antibiotics for the parasite. I wondered if the parasite had wreaked havoc on my microbiome before I nuked it with antibiotics that worsened it further. Fecal transplants can introduce a whole host of probiotic bacteria into your gut, and it can re-establish a healthy homeostasis. In normal person speak, I wanted to pay to put another person's poop in my butthole. I carried on filming videos from my bed, blogging my experience. I was pretty convinced that during this time I wouldn't be alive much longer, and part of me wanted there to be some kind of document of what I'd been through in hopes that it might help someone later down the line.
And if this illness does kill me, then I want this video. I want somebody who can take notice of this video and do something with it.
I had a fundraiser open to save money for the fecal transplant, which was very slowly creeping up. I needed to save $6,000 in total. I remember my girlfriend wanting to come and visit, but telling her that I didn't want her to. There are a few reasons for this. One, I was pretty sure I was going to die soon. The day before Joe died, I'd been sat with him at a pub, catching up, playing pool, cracking jokes. I'd often wondered if I'd have been hit less hard by his death if I'd been away at university when it happened. For my girlfriend's sake, I wanted her to have distance from me. I also felt ugly. I felt unlovable. I was unable to communicate, and I didn't want her to see me like that. I watched my mum look thinner and more frail every day that she had to watch her son deteriorate, and I felt immense guilt. My mum would often walk in and find me either crying on the bathroom or kitchen floor, having no energy to get back into bed. She'd often sit with me and massage my feet, which always hurt, and she'd hum melodies to me like she would do when I was a little boy. During this whole time, I hadn't picked up my guitar.
So I wonder what this has been like for him to like relive all this stuff again.
Well, is definitely an emotional wreck before he even sat down to even tell us where he was going.
Yeah.
Other thing for me, Bonnie, was all of this. How many chapters? This is chapter 6, and they still haven't figured out what's ailing him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds like it sounds like he's feeling like it's down to the end of everything. You know, I think before there was hard stuff, but I think this was probably for him maybe the hardest time for him, and maybe that's why it's like bringing up so much for him. But like it can't. Yeah, it's just like it brings back things that like I just haven't even thought of for myself in years. My experience is different, but also like I know what it's like to every time I got sick, I was scared it was going to be the last time I got sick and I was going to die. And the way that what was happening to me was impacting my family, and having my family having to see me go through, dealing with my HIV diagnosis and being sick. And like, I mean, I was in the ERs a number of times and all different kinds of treatments. And like,
Wow.
and then I was a meth head, like later on. And so like, my family's just, I understand that complex, that being in that space. And then like, even like my ex-husband not wanting him around me when I was sick, but also not wanting to be alone. But like, it's just this weird sort of dynamic of not wanting to give up, but also like being so exhausted emotionally, physically. I think I can connect a lot more with like the emotions and the spirituality aspect of it, maybe. Like a lot of the physical pain that he went through is not something that I can really connect with, but I guess some of the thinking and stuff is what comes up for me in my own experience, that it's just like so long ago. But it's like something about, I think, just in him being so raw and like tender with it all right now. I think it allows me to go a little closer to that as well too, which is just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm saying a lot of the same things, talking about my stuff with him, but that's just kind of, I think, just part of the journeys that we've went on. I don't know. Ready?
I ain't got nothing to say for a change.
All right, ready? Here we go. I'll go like slightly little. I went the wrong way. Sorry, everyone. I'm new.
Clearly.
Every day the same thing. I'd wake up in pain, eat a meal of blended vegetables and chicken, lie with my eyes closed for hours while the world seemed to spin erratically, and I'd often cry as the bones of my legs felt like they wanted to grow out and burst out of my skin. Despite this, what I didn't know is things were about to get a lot worse. Come June, I've been in bed for about 6 months straight. I've regained some energy to leave the house every now and then to go shopping for groceries with my mum, and I've finally reached my target for the fecal transplant, and my mum drove me to the clinic to get the procedure. Everything seemed to go as smoothly as it could for such a bizarre experience. I received a colonic irrigation, which was like a car wash for your colon. Actually feels pretty good. They then proceeded to put someone else's excrement in my behind. They would repeat this process for 5 consecutive days. When I got home, I realised I felt a little odd, almost manic, and I was hopeful that this meant my energy was coming back. But it wasn't a nice feeling. As the days progressed, I started to feel an innate sense that something was very wrong. It seemed my immune system was going into some sort of overdrive. My brain was buzzing, and the more time that passed, the more uncomfortable I felt. I remember early one morning, I was lying on the kitchen floor after attempting to get a glass of water. My body hurt so much that I was digging my nails into the laminate flooring, screaming, and my mum ran in and asked me what was wrong. I remember repeating, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go," over and over again. I felt myself falling down a deep tunnel in my mind, almost as though my entire soul was tumbling down into an abyss. When I finally crashed to the bottom, I was hit with this immense feeling of stillness and peace. I stopped crying. I sat up, and my mother looked at me, puzzled. I've not felt to this day that sort of serenity that I felt in that moment. I looked around the room, and everything seemed to have gained a clarity and quality. But what was most peculiar was the feeling of stillness. There seemed to be some sort of respite from the mental torture and fog in my brain. I still to this day have no explanation for what happened. I looked at my mum, I smiled at her calmly, and I told her that everything was okay now. Her partner Michael came in, and I remember them both looking at me, perplexed. I started speaking fluidly for the first time in months, but it wasn't quite me. I was cracking jokes, being witty. My mum would laugh nervously. I remember feeling as though I was coming up off an ecstasy pill. I felt this underlying feeling of euphoria. I caught myself occasionally erratically snapping my fingers or making whistling noises in between sentences, or staring at some empty part of the room as though there was somebody there, then snapping back to the space and talking to my mum. This feeling of intense euphoria lasted about 48 hours. During this time, I'd adopted some newer strange behaviours. Everything in my room that wasn't parallel bothered me, so I had to make sure it was aligned and facing the same direction. The whistle and the finger click became a new tick, and it started rising in frequency the more time that elapsed. I also noticed that I get stuck on words or sentences when talking to my mum. For example, if I was saying a sentence like, "I'm not sure how I'm feeling today," I would sometimes get stuck on the whole sentence or just a word from it and repeat it about 30 or 40 times before I could move on to the next. So I'm not sure how I'm feeling today, feeling today, over and over. I can't really explain why, but it's like saying it carved out a safe space for me. After about 2 days, that feeling of peace and euphoria was swapped out for a feeling of immense dread and doom. I felt fear fill my body, unlike any fear that I've ever felt. I'd often wake up in the early hours of the morning screaming at the top of my lungs, a torture scream that would fill the whole house, a scream like my legs were being sawn off. I felt pure terror. My mum would run in and try and calm me down. Sometimes I'd be thrashing, hitting the mattress, pounding the walls. It usually ended up in me exhausting myself and her stroking my head in her lap as I sobbed and repeated the same words over and over again. Everything in these moments terrified me. The compulsion to make everything parallel became a necessity. Whenever I was in the kitchen or car and the dials were facing the wrong way, it taunted me. My mum started taking me to a weekly talk therapist in hopes it would stop me from killing myself. I did catch myself researching the most painless ways to do it. I often daydreamed about death, and it made me feel at peace. At this point, intense paranoid delusions started creeping in. I wondered if what was happening to me was demonic. I don't remember how I got there, but I remember one time speaking on the landline to someone who claimed to be an expert in dark magic. He told me that being around my mum was bad for me. He told me that she was bad. He told me that I needed to do a ritual with black wax candles in order to free myself. I remember ordering black candles from eBay, and when they arrived I had a change of heart, and I decided against doing this dark magic ritual. I fell asleep that night, and I woke up the next day to find the candles totally melted onto the white mantelpiece that they were on. They'd never been lit. I still don't really know for certain if anything of these things happened, but the melted wax was definitely real. I remember picking it off with my nails. There were moments that my rational mind knew that I was hallucinating. Sometimes in the night I would hear perfect string quartet symphonies with no sound source for them to be coming from. I remember one time my mum took me with her to the post office because during this time I'd rarely been left in the house alone. I remember the lady behind the till reaching for some sellotape. As she tugged on the tape, it sounded as though it had been amplified 1,000 times. It was deafeningly loud. I ran out of the store crying and shaking, and I sat in the passenger seat of my mum's car, rocking back and forth, where she found me uncontrollably sobbing, repeating the words, I can't, over and over again. My paranoia grew. I boomeranged between thinking I may have been latched onto by some demonic entity, and I became suspicious of even my own family, to thinking I might be part of some sort of twisted experiment, where a group of observers were seeing how far they could push me before I snapped and shattered. My irrational mind concluded that if I start behaving in unexpected ways, I might confuse the people conducting this experiment, and they'd shut it down. I'd sit in my own bed, manically grinning in response to the jolt of pain in my legs. I'd say things to Mum and Michael which made no sense at all. This all seemed to be leading up to a very unusual day. I can't quite recall the details of how it happened because it was quite tricky to tell what was reality and what was not. But from what I remember, I was in the car with my mum, parked outside a supermarket, and I'd put my laptop on the roof of the car while I'd helped her with groceries. I'd forgotten it was there and she drove off. It wasn't until about an hour later I noticed and I started panicking. My laptop had on it hundreds of songs from my time in Brighton. It was all I had really to show for my life. I was already in such an emotionally fragile space that losing that felt like some sick, torturous joke. We drove back and searched every place it could be with no luck. As we were driving home, my mum pulled up at a junction and something in me snapped. I got out of the car and I ran away from it. I convinced myself this was still part of the experiment, because what else could explain that sort of luck? Once I got far enough away, I proceeded to strip off all my clothes, and I lay in the middle of a road staring up at the sky, laughing in hysterics. This was the opposite of how one should react to losing their computer, and so it seemed like the perfect way to confuse my observers. With time, the police showed up, as did my mother. By some miracle, she convinced them not to take me in or section me. And by a further miracle, they also relayed to my mum that a dented laptop had been handed in an hour earlier. I took this as meaning my experiment had worked. I eventually snuck off as my mum was talking to them. I wandered slowly around this unfamiliar village until I encountered the second angel I would meet in my life, this time in the form of a black homeless man. I'm not sure how we got there, but as I was walking, I turned to my side and a man dressed in tattered grey clothes was walking beside me. He asked me what was wrong, and I explained the best I could the events of the day. I explained that I'd been sick a very long time, that I was tired, so tired, and that I just wanted to be better. The homeless man paused. He put his hand on my shoulders, and he stared into my eyes. His eyes had a light grey tint. They were almost white. And something about his presence made me feel incredibly safe, incredibly still. He smiled, a kind smile, and he said to me, "Everything's going to be okay, Ren." And then he vanished. I hadn't told him my name. I never hallucinated anything after that day. I have no real explanation for that day. I chalk it down to a psychotic episode or stress-induced hallucination, but the events which follow put a lot of questions in my mind. What he said to me was very simple, but also very needed. I realise a lot of people might hear these stories and just presume I'm a bit mad, a bit weird, like I do when people tell me their ghost stories. All I can do is tell you my experience and let you derive your own conclusions from it. Anyway, I got home and I started to obsessively research ways to escape this new seemingly psychotic space I was in. It's a strange thing to describe, but it was like me, Ren, was in the passenger seat of my mind while some other entity was steering the ship. I was watching myself do things like scream at night or repeat words over and over, and I think to myself, damn, that's pretty crazy. But I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Every now and then I had moments of lucidity where I was more in control. I was doing things like stimming, I had night terrors, vocal tics, I'd stutter and I'd stammer, and for me a lot of that lined up with some sort of transitory or stress-induced autism. I'd known a family with an autistic teenager and some of the behaviour seemed to line up, which led me to a new pathway of online research. I came across this support group for a subset of children with autism called PANDAS, P-A-N-D-A-S. It was believed that these kids had the neurological infection of the Streptococcus bacteria that was causing these autistic-like behaviours. I was presenting with some similar behaviours. These kids would do long courses of antibiotics and their symptoms would diminish or disappear, and they'd be seemingly normal children again. I speculated that the fecal transplant introduced a whole host of new bacteria into my gut, but that I didn't have the immune regulation to be able to control it, and it had sent my entire system into some sort of inflammation overdrive. I researched the most effective antibiotic for Streptococcus, one being penicillin, and I convinced my mum to take me to the doctor, where I faked a stomach bug. I lied to him, and I said I'd had similar things in the past, and the penicillin cleared it right up. He reluctantly prescribed me a 2-week course of antibiotics because I was so persistent. I got home and I started the course. Initially I felt fucking awful, somehow even more tired than usual, and then towards the end of the course I noticed a definite shift in my energy and comfort. By the end of the course, my psychotic behaviours had disappeared and my energy felt a lot better. I stayed indefinitely on various herbal antibiotic supplements like oregano oil at this time, having learned that this was also active against certain pathogenic bacteria. keep in mind also, I'm just going off script right now. Keep in mind if I'd have followed the advice of most of the doctors that I'd seen at the time who were talking to me about my psychotic behaviors, I would have probably been put into a mental facility and medicated with medication that I didn't need, and would have probably gotten a lot worse. So it was very lucky that I took no one tells you that antibiotics can treat psychosis, and these antibiotics did actually treat my psychosis. And I was no stranger to the placebo effect. I'd taken everything, it wasn't placebo. It didn't matter. After about a week, I'd finished the course, and some of my more familiar symptoms like fatigue and pain started creeping back again. But that didn't matter, because what this whole experience had taught me was that the origin of my sickness was in fact bacterial, and it was pathogenic. The biggest thing it taught me was I could actually do something about it. I was no stranger to the placebo effect after years of trialing different drugs and supplements. This wasn't placebo. I took to the internet again and found a world-renowned specialist over in Brussels who was also leading a lot of the cutting-edge research for ME. I got on the phone and made an appointment. He was booked up for the next 9 months, but that gave me enough time to save money. The antibiotics and new herbs I was taking had also given me a new lease of life, and the hope for a cure made me more determined than ever. I started having enough energy to go on walks, which was huge for me at the time. My dad would drive over to my mum's and we'd go out in the car, and I'd take photos of wildlife on beaches. I was picking up my guitar again after months in bed. I eventually invited my girlfriend over and made the decision to move back to Brighton as soon as I was strong enough to. It was around this time that I started working on that album Freckled Angels. I knew that the future tests weren't going to be cheap. I pulled together some old tracks from the days I was working with Sony, and I got hold of Eric and asked his permission to release them, which he graciously granted, so thank you, Eric. I then pulled together some newer material and compiled my first ever album from my bedroom. In those days, I had no real way of promoting myself and no energy to do shows, so it was mostly to be listened to by my friends and family. I named the album Freckled Angels after Joe. Joe was covered head to toe in freckles, and it seemed fitting to dedicate this work to one of the coolest and funniest people I ever knew. Any ounce of energy I did have from my limited reserves, I'd pour into recording that album. It's by no means a work of art, and it's a bit thematically disjointed, but some songs like Crutch or Pocket Full of Pain went a long way to photographing that time. I'm going to leave you with a recording of Pocket Full of Pain. Back in those days. Enjoy.
Before we go into the song.
Child.
It's a lot.
There's so much to unpack in there. I think, did I tell you? I did mention when I had the near-death experience where I felt that serenity, that complete void of nothing and just complete and utter stillness. I actually felt it again when he was explaining it there.
Yeah.
So to me, I think he did have that near-death experience at that point. Because I that is exactly what it felt like. Exactly how he explained it was exactly, I think, how I explained it. Mm-hmm. And then I can also relate to the black candles. You know, my family has that background in spiritual magic and things like that. And I know the uses of black candles and 7-layer candles and things like that. So I have that type of understanding, and those also for reverse magic as well. Mm-hmm. Can be used for reverse magic. I don't know what the person had told him to use that for, but I think that is what you would use those for, to reverse some magic that was done onto you, which could sound also like somebody did put a hex on him from hearing about all of the stuff that he goes through and knowing what those things are, and it can't be, you know what I mean, subscribed or described, and doctors can't ratify it. Could mean, to me, from where I come from, is like, yeah, you got something on you, and to use a candle to reverse it. That's what my family probably would have said for him to do as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're stuck in those spots where there's no medical solutions and all that sort of stuff. You're kind of left to supernatural or you know, whatever, to try to find some sort of like serenity or
Yes.
peace or comfort in that. So one thing I do want to say is like the graphics have gotten a lot better. Like the graphics in the first few chapters, and this is very silly, but like the graphics
The anime you're talking about?
Yeah, like the anime or like the little clips or whatever, like the B-roll they call it, has been really bad in the beginning, but now it looks like it looks a little closer to, some of it actually looks like maybe it was made specifically for this, whereas others maybe not so much, but there's definitely a lot more of a connection to it, which I think it's silly, but I think it does add to it just a little bit.
And I'm curious to know if anybody in our subscribers have ever had that near-death experience, and what was it like for you if you've ever had that? Does that kind of relate for you? And what he explains, was it even that kind of a thing, you think?
Well, and like the psychotic break stuff or all that, or even just around like insanity or whatever, I've heard a lot of people like with using meth or some substances, they can create those sorts of kind of experiences where like you kind of are watching yourself do these sorts of things and you know it's not real or true, yet you're still like living as if it is, sort of thing. So that's the only part that I kind of could relate to a little bit, but yeah.
And the hallucinations, I can remember, I think I was right before I had transitioned, it was in Minneapolis. I had went to the gay 90s. I think it was Pride, as a matter of fact. And I was hanging out with this group of friends who had put acid in everything that in the house, you name it, it had acid in it. So we went out to the club that night and everything was fine, Bonnie. And then all of a sudden, everything around me turned into zombies.
Oh, wow.
And that's, to this day, I have a huge phobia of zombies. And I ended up walking down the street with, my clothes all ripped. And I ended up trying to go into the Basilica of St. Mary. This was like about 10 o'clock or something like that. I was literally trying to pull these doors open on this church to run to safety. And God wouldn't let me in, child.
Damn, girl.
The doors were closed, like not for you, girl, sister, girl. So that's my experience of hallucinations.
Well, I'm glad you survived the zombies.
Yes.
All right. So should we go into the song?
Let's do it, Bonnie.
All right, here we go.
Cool. This is a young REN.
Very young.
Da, 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 da. Yeah. I watch the sun when it rises, when it's climbing the sky. I sit here with the pocket full of pain. I've got tears in my juice, in my mind there's a noose, but my hope makes me cling to the day. I wanna run with the sun and the moon and the stars till I'm running faster than my pain. I wish I could breathe out this fear, this doubt, send it into the Milky Way. I got my finger on the trigger of a Magnum 44, but survival instinct won't let me bleed. I wanna put a bullet straight at my cerebral tissues place, but my index finger won't let me squeeze. I wanna skate down my vein with the blade till the blood runs thicker than the thoughts in my head. But don't ask me why, this is not my goodbye, it's a suicide failure attempt.
It's like I'm gonna kill myself this way. Like,
I mean, I was all into wow. I could really see him running with the sun. I love that whole, simulation of running with the sun, running with the moon. That's beautiful. And then he wants to go ahead and end it all, child.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting cadence and vibe to be talking about suicide. But I just love.
It's beautiful.
I love his cadence. I love his. He has such an earnestness, and a way of like being so like in it, but also not like so serious. Like, I don't know. He's just able to kind of be like, not take himself too seriously, but also be like real, like super connected and real with it all. I guess if that makes sense. I think that's a hard thing to balance.
That baby get
I
deep.
choose life, I choose life, I choose living. Put the bottles and the pills down. I stand up, I breathe with precision. Calm washes over me like a break in the storm. I close my eyes for a minute, then my troubles transform. And I travel deep into the corners of my mind. I remember the first time I felt hopeless. I think I was 5, cause at the hands of this bully, the lessons that I learned is that this world is not so beautiful. Sometimes it can be burnt by the fires of evil that are living inside the common people just like you and like I. We'll all strive to survive, and we all climb to the top over our brothers and sisters, whether we mean to or not. And we get lost in the tide of insecurities and power seeking fooleries, but happiness don't live inside no jewelleries. In an age of distraction, we would rather tap on our iPhones than stop a war from happening. It's heartbreaking, Satan's patiently waiting for us to mess up big time, so hell on earth will be blatant. So forgive me for wanting to blow my brains out, but I've got a change of heart. It's time for change now, rearrange now, fist in the sky. I say proud, say loud, revolution word on my brain now. It's with the people, yeah, power's with the people. If the people strive for unity, the world it could be equal. You could be the start of the beginning, a dawn of no stress, no troubles, no sinning, just living. So overthrow evil and greed, put aside your distractions, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, now welcome change with me, now welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me. Yeah, 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 yeah. And da-da-da-do.
I'm like, what is in the air?
I like this song.
Yes, definitely. Sorry for my sneezes. I guess allergies or something. But no, it's good. It's a nice cap to that chapter for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the positive message at the end.
It definitely seems like he's on the other side. I feel like I keep saying that every week, but it seems like maybe so. I think there's only 2 more chapters, so maybe we'll get to the other side of some more things. We still haven't, like at this point, we still haven't found out that it's Lyme disease.
What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, he's finding out that it's bacterial or like there's some, there's something else going on, probably other than what they originally thought. But so it sounds like they're getting closer. But
Let us pray.
well, yeah, all right, all right. So